Want to welcome everyone to our next class and excited for everyone to be able to join. I'm going to go ahead and share with you, as I usually do, the slide deck to get started. And hopefully we can see that. We are in 2 Kings, Melech Aleph, and the adventures continue. David is going to come to the end of his life in this chapter, and Solomon will take full control of the kingdom. And as we turn the slide deck, again, just a reminder of the position of Israel at this time as a united kingdom, both Judah and Israel together. Always a tenuous situation. Many times in the 5 civil wars that David had to fend off, many times it was Judah already against the other tribes of Israel. And so you see the feature lines even during David's rule. That will be put at bay with the fabulous stability and wealth that Solomon will bring to this united kingdom, but it will disintegrate, and the tremendous both from a positional standpoint geographically and then from the trade routes, this amazing kingdom that God had always envisioned will begin to deteriorate. And as I mentioned earlier, this will become very clear as we look at the Solomon cycle that David, and then of course Solomon, enjoyed very strong relationship with the Sidonians, or the Phoenicians, and their great ports at Tyre and Sidon. And with that, trade throughout the entire Mediterranean. And when we get into more of the chapters on the Solomon cycle, and we'll see just how fabulous being at this crossroads was in moving amazing amounts of high value material from the Levant, this area, onto the Aegean, Cyprus, the Italian peninsula. Already there is the beginning empire of Carthage, and further to the west in Spain. And so the Western Mediterranean, very, very wealthy in resources, bringing back silver and tin and bronze, iron, all the things that are needed to have an incredible kingdom. And so it's an amazing time in history. Again, the great powers on both sides, north and south, east and west, were weakened, and God allowed this united kingdom to come forward and be very, very fruitful. And as we look at David's family, we're going to say goodbye to David in this chapter. And already many of the sons, we assume, have certainly been killed, or for whatever reason, they're no longer in the picture. Only Adonijah, who we saw last week, and of course Solomon or Solomon or Shlomo, is going to be, and is in fact, the king. Shalom, Absalom, of course, was killed. We'll see the last adventures in the coming to end of Joab, and all of his treachery, killing Abner, the great army commander of Saul, and then later with jealousy killing his kin, Amasa, who also then became the commander, man full of treachery. And he placed his lot with Adoniah, trying to take and usurp the crown. And so it's complex, but finally we're winnowing it down. It's going to be Solomon, and we'll be going through the many chapters of his reign. And one of the things that becomes exciting about the Solomon cycle is this is where we start to get into massive, hard architecture that corroborates everything we read in 2 Kings, also in 1st and 2nd Chronicles, well, mainly 1st Chronicles, about the reign of the kingdom of Solomon. So it's a very exciting cycle, and we begin to see significant, hard archaeological records that are fairly recent, such as the finding of the Solomonic wall around Jerusalem and Jerusalem. That only occurred in the last 20 years, so it's an exciting time with biblical archaeology. Next slide is just to refresh us that we closed out Samuel with a very important final sin or grievous mistake on David's part that led to him buying and therefore Solomon inheriting this threshing floor. And this threshing floor, very, very historical, the site where Abraham attempted to sacrifice Yitzhak. God stopped him, but that land, that piece, that parcel called Moriah in the Hebrew in the time of Abraham, or the place of seeing, being seen by God, was in fact to become the Temple Mount. And so it is a very specific reason why David buys this from, we're not sure if he's an Israelite. We're pretty sure he is a Jebusite, Aravna, but he buys the land, buys the threshing floor, and that's where the temple will be built. That's coming in the next few chapters. And just a little bit on this slide to give us an understanding. This was the original Jebusite stronghold of Salem, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, or now pronounced in many ways in Hebrew, Yerushalayim. And this was changed to the city of David, or Zion. And it's this little finger that sits on really a hill. Over here is the Mount of Olives, the Kidron Valley. And so up here is where the temple will sit on Mount Moriah. Of course, it's just a hill. There's no mountains there. And it will be a fabulous temple indeed. Solomon begins to take all of this wealth, and not just wealth, but the ability to go to the most sophisticated civilizations at the time and get craftspeople, architects, fine craftsmen in metals and masonry, and so many other things that Israel just didn't have. And so it allows him to bring together the resources and the know-how to build something that is, it will become a wonder of the world, Solomon's fabulous temple. And then, let's not forget last week, I'll read this. Adoniah too was afraid because of Solomon. He got up, went and took a hold of the horns of the altar. That'll repeat in this chapter today. Solomon was told here, Adonai is terrified of King Solomon. He has grabbed a hold of the horns of the altar and is saying, first let King Solomon swear to me he will not have his servant executed. So the whole coup attempt, the attempt to usurp the kingdom. Remember, Joab got involved. Abiathar, the priest, they all got involved, but it failed because it wasn't in God's will. And so once he knows it fails, the coup attempt is failing, he runs to grab a hold of the horns of the altar. And I guess it's a way of stopping any immediate execution so that at least he can plead mercy. Solomon said, if he will demonstrate that he is a worthy man, not a hair of his head will fall to the earth. But if he is found making trouble, that's very important to read those carefully. If he is found making trouble, he will die. So King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar. He came and prostrated himself before King Solomon, and Solomon said to him, go on home. And, he's been a very wise king from the beginning. Now later, as we'll read, God blesses him even more with that wisdom. But, you don't want the first couple of months of your new kingship killing your brothers, or half brothers in this case. And so he is very wise keeping, if you will, the peace of the kingdom together. And because of that, he says to him, you can live, but you have to be a man of honor. You better not get into any court intrigue or trouble. I am the sovereign by God's ordinance, by my Father's wish, and don't go there. And so that's a very strong warning and an act of mercy as we closed out last week. And this week, I call it Finally Your Wild Oats Come to You. And we will see what happens to Joab after his many treacherous deeds, the killing of Abner, the killing of Absalom, the killing of Amasa, and others. We don't even know half of what he did. A very treacherous and conniving, wily guy, and justice will come to his door. And he too will grab the horns of the altar, but it's not going to turn out the same way as Adoniah. We'll also see finally what happens to Shimei, who pelted and cursed David as he was fleeing from Jerusalem in that great exodus as Absalom was attempting to take over the kingdom. And we're going to stop here. And this, get back to the slide deck, this will introduce, of course, the rest of the story for Abishalom. And so we'll stop at this point. I'm going to pull down the slide deck and then switch over to the narrative. And at this point, let's take a bit of a break and let some sharing and some thoughts occur. Lots happening running up to this chapter, and I'll pause and let Mike get some thoughts going. Thank you. Okay, we're back now. We've had some good conversations, a lot there, and it's time to dig in again to the narrative in 1 Kings chapter 2. Here we go. The time came near for David to die, and so he commissioned Solomon his son as follows: I am going the way of all the earth, even kings, even great kings, even emperors, all come to the same end, the same fate as all humans, they die. Therefore be strong, show yourself a man. Echoes from, if you recall the first chapter of Joshua, don't be afraid, Joshua. You can do this. He's, rich heritage in the scriptures. Come on now, be strong. Stand up to do what is right, God's will. Observe the charge of Adonai your God to go in his ways and keep his regulations. And so I'm charging you to follow the way of Adonai, his regulations, his mitzvah, his rulings and instructions in accordance with what is written in the Torah of Moshe. So not just anything, but the Torah that I have now begun to copy. This is why we know we have good heritage of the scriptures going back to the time of David and even earlier, because David, as any great king, would write out his religious precepts and laws coming from God. Why? So that you will succeed in all you do, wherever you go. So if you follow the precepts of Adonai, hold them close as I have tried to do, then you will succeed as I have succeeded. So it's a very simple formula. There's a lot of wisdom there for us today. Sometimes we get into trouble and frustrated and things aren't going well. You got to stop and go, am I walking in the ways of Adonai? And Adonai in the form of Yeshua, which gives even more teaching. If you, Adonai, will fulfill what he promised me when he said, if your children pay attention to how they live, conducting themselves before me honestly with all their heart and being, you will never lack a man on the throne of Israel. This is called the covenant, the Davidic covenant. And again, it's an if-then. If, David, your lineage will have an open and honest and sincere heart and walk before me as best they can, following my instructions, my mitzvahs, my regulations from Torah, They will never lack having someone on the throne. And that's the promise from God. And it's an eternal promise that we'll talk about a little bit later. Moreover, you are aware of what Joab, the son of Zorah, did to me. That is, what he did to the two commanders of the armies of Israel. First of all, of course, there was Abner, the son of Ner, and Amasa, the son of Yittar. He killed them, shedding the blood of war in peacetime, putting the blood of war on the belt around his waist and the shoes on his feet. That's deep symbolism of a very cold-blooded, very guilty, very inappropriate, not act of war, but an act of murder. And by the way, this is one of the ways we know from Scripture that God delineates the killing in war or murder. And murder is there is peace. There is no war called up. You're killing for selfish motivation and greed or insecurity or whatever. And that is certainly the case of Joab. I think he was filled with insecurity, wanted no one else but himself to lead, and he killed two men to make sure he got that position and he stayed in that position. Therefore, act according to your wisdom, not mine. I'm just telling you my thoughts, but now it's time for you, Solomon, to be your own king. Do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace. Interesting. I'm not telling you exactly what to do, but you'll figure it out. But show kindness to the sons of Barzillai, the Gileadite. Include them with those who eat at your table, because they came and stood with me when I was fleeing from Absalom, your brother. Finally, you have with you Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benyamini, from Bachorim. He laid a terrible curse on me when I was on my way to Machiaim, and he came down to meet me at the Yarden. So I swore to him by Adonai that I would not have him put to death with the sword. Now, however, you should not let him go unpunished. You're a wise man, and you will know what you should do to him. You will bring his gray head down to the grave with blood. And so it's very interesting. Even though David showed mercy to this man at the time, and he needed to, he didn't need to get separated from his own focus of his own repentance and sorrow as he flees Jerusalem, going into exile because his son Absalom is rebelling against him. He stays very focused. He forgives him at that moment. In fact, he sees this Benjaminite as a tool of God disciplining him and does not take any action. But the man did throw and hurl literal physical stones at the king of Israel, and you die for things like that. So it's time for justice, not vendetta, justice. And this is very important. It's time for justice with Joab. It's time for justice with a lot of people that we're going to read about in this chapter. Then here we go. Then David slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. David had ruled Israel for 40 years. That's just amazing. 7 years in Hebron, 33 years in Jerusalem. Solomon sat on the throne of David, his father, and his rule had become firmly established when Adoniah, the son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon. Well, how curious. So when David has passed, Solomon is firmly the king. There's no question about it. Then here comes this other son of David, who is not so long ago, maybe a year ago, maybe even a few months ago, attempted to take the crown away from Solomon. And here he comes to Solomon's mother. Okay, now remember, Solomon said, if you will stay a wholehearted, true, and good person, not one hair of your head will be harmed. But now we've got some conniving going on. She asked, very appropriately, have you come as a friend? He answered, yes, as a friend. Then he continued, I have something to say to you. She said, go on. He said, "You know that the kingdom should have been mine, that all Israel was looking to me to be the ruler." And that, as the scriptures say, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Right there. He has not let go of this. That's his motivation. That's why he's here right now with Bathsheba. And he's saying to her, that should have happened. Now, she should have picked up on this, but evidently, feeling, I don't know what kind of feelings, we'll read about it. He said, "You know that the kingdom should have been mine, that all Israel was looking to me to be the ruler. No matter, but it is a matter, isn't it?" He says, "No matter. Who cares?" No, 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 no. You really do care. The kingdom has turned around and become my brother's because Adonai gave it to him. Interesting. But now I ask one favor of you. Don't deny me. Go on, she said. He said, "Please speak to Solomon the king, for he won't say no to you." It says something about the relationship between mother and son, and ask him to give me Abishag, the Shunammite, as my wife. It's a very, very peculiar question. Bathsheba said, "All right, I will speak to the king on your behalf." If you will recall, Abishag was the beautiful virgin daughter of Israel that was selected to be a bed warming partner, for lack of a better word, for David in his old age, to keep him warm. And it's very specific that she in no way had sexual relationships with David, or David had no sexual relationships with her, but that she served in this very kind of practical and noble purpose. And so, okay, David dies. She's no longer in that service, and yet she is sought out by Adoniah to marry. So Bathsheba, I think she's thinking, "Oh, well, I was expecting something different. Oh, yeah, no problem. Here we go." So Bathsheba went to King Solomon, to speak to him on behalf of Adoniah. The king rose to meet her and bowed down to her. That shows the respect of a son to his mother. Great thing to maybe pass on to the teens, the young people. Then he sat down on his throne and had a throne set up for the king's mother so that she sat at his right. She said to him, "I'm asking one small favor of you. Don't deny me." The king said to her, "Ask mother, I won't deny you." Interesting back and forth going on there. She said, "Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to Adoniah, your brother, as his wife." King Solomon answered his mother, "Why are you asking Abishag the Shunammite for Adoniah? Ask the kingdom for him too. After all, he is my older brother. Yes, for him and for Eviatar the Kohen and for Joab the son of Zurah." Then the king swore by Adonai, "May God do terrible things to me and worse if Adoniah has not condemned himself to death with this request. Now therefore, as Adonai lives, who has established me, put me on the throne of David my father, and set up a dynasty for me as he promised, Adonai will certainly be put to death today." King Solomon commissioned Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he struck him down so that he died. To Eviatar the Kohen, the king said, "Get yourself to Anat, to your own fields. You deserve to die, but I will not put to death just now, since you did carry the ark of Adonai Elohim before David, my father, and you suffered together with my father in everything he suffered." So Solomon forced Eviatar out of the task as Kohen to Adonai, so that what Adonai had said in Shiloh about the family of Eli might be fulfilled. And there's a lot of finishing up of things as this chapter comes to a close. I'm going to stop and let Mike or whoever's facilitating let you guys talk about it. There's a lot going on here. This is a chapter about finishing things up and about justice, not revenge, not vendetta, but justice, and justice catching up with certain individuals, even though years and years and years have gone by. But, God knows everything, right? Nobody gets away with anything. This chapter is very important for us as disciples when we see other people doing even terrible things, it seems like they never, the results never affect them. The impact never comes to them. They never have to, if you will, pay their dues. This is an important chapter for us, seeing how God's justice is patient. His mercy is patient, thank goodness. But his justice at times is patient, but the justice comes. So we'll take a break and let Mike, or the facilitator this morning, let you guys talk this through. Thank you. And we're back. We're going to start closing out this chapter. This is kind of like, thus it shall be written, now thus it shall be done. So here we go. When the news came to Joab, he fled to the tent of Adonai and took hold of the horns of the altar. He kind of watched, I guess, maybe a year ago what Adonai had done, so he thought maybe that's good for me too. For Joab had given his support to Adonai, even though he had not supported Abishalom. King Solomon was told, Joab has fled to the tent of Adonai. He's there by the altar. Solomon sent Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, with the order, go strike him down. Benaiah came to the tent of Adonai and said, the king says, leave. He answered, no, I'd rather die here. Benaiah brought the message back to the king. This is what Joab said to him. The king answered him, do what he said, strike him down and bury him. In other words, I'm not going to let the impact of the sacredness of the temple stop justice. That is a man using God's edicts to get away from justice. Justice will be done. If you won't have enough courtesy and respect of God to get away from the altar, then you'll strike him down right there. And that's what happens. In this way, you will take away from me and my father's family the blood which you have shed for no reason. Adonai will bring his blood back on his own head because he struck down two men more righteous and better than he. He killed them with the sword without my father's awareness. Abner, the son of Ner, commander of the army of Israel, and Amasa, the son of Yatar, commander of the army of Yehuda. In this way, their blood will return on the head of Joab and his descendants forever. But for David, his descendants, and his family, and his throne, there will be peace forever from Adonai. So Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, went and struck him down, killed him, and he was buried in his own house in the desert. The king put Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, in charge of the army instead, and the king replaced Abiatar, and this is very important historically, with Zadok, the Kohen. And the line of Zadok, Zadok, as it's listed in the English, is very important for later histories, even down to the time of Jesus, with the perception of that priesthood going on at the temple, what's going on in the desert. Remember the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we have the Essene community, their feelings about a priesthood that is functioning, that does not come from the line of Tzeduk. And we'll cover that as we go through the histories. The king summoned Shimei and said to him, build yourself a house in Yerushalayim and live there. Do not go outside the city walls. Know for a fact that on the day you go out and cross the Vadi Kidron, the Kidron Valley, you will certainly die, and your blood will be on your own head. Again, already Solomon is showing such wisdom. Shimei answered the king, what you have said is good, as my lord the king has said. So will your servant do. So Shimei lived in Jerusalem for a long time, but after 3 years, two of Shimei's slaves ran away and went to Achish, son of Machai, king of Gath. They told Shimei, your slaves are in Gath. So Shimei set out, saddled his donkey, and went to Achish and Gath to look for slaves. Then Shimei returned, bringing the slaves from Gath. Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and back. The king summoned Shimei and said to him, didn't I have you swear by Adonai and forewarned you by telling you, know for a fact that on the day you leave and go anywhere outside the city, you will certainly die? And you answered me, what you are saying is good, I hear it. Why then haven't you kept the oath of Adonai and the mitzvah I charged you with? Moreover, the king said to Shemaiah, you know in your own heart all the terrible things you did to David, my father. Therefore, Adonai will bring back your wickedness on your own head. The king Solomon will be blessed, and the throne of David will be established before Adonai forever. So the king gave the order to Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck him down so that he died. Thus the kingdom was established in Solomon's hands. And whew, this has been an incredibly tough chapter with a lot of bloodshed, but it's righteous and correct justice executed with absolute clarity within the patience of Adonai at the right time. And we see at this moment in Solomon's life, in Solomon's life, he is wise already beyond his years, and he is doing things not only correct, but in a very wise and proper way. And so it's a joy to behold. I will stop there. There'll be, I'm sure, some great conversation that will continue to occur. And we're done for this session, at least for my contribution with the video. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Take care.